With the new season just a few weeks away, I thought I would go through some of the transfers that have happened so far throughout this transfer window. However, there haven't been many blockbuster transfers so far, and usually kind of like the big transfers start like right as soon as the window opens, and then it takes a while, but usually at about this stage all of the blockbuster transfers have actually happened. However, there have been some pretty interesting transfers, though some that I thought would happen and then others where I was a bit surprised that they happened. So the first transfer that I'm going to look at is Michael Olise, and he's gone from Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich for £50.8 million. And to be fair, this one doesn't really surprise me. It kind of surprises me that he's gone to Bayern. However, he played 19 games last season for Crystal Palace, scoring 10 goals and 6 assists, all of these games in the Premier League. So really very, very good kind of consistent numbers in a league like the Premier League as well. 10 goals and 6 assists in 19 games is a very, very good record. So he was obviously very consistent and he was contributing to his team a lot. And Crystal Palace, to be fair, did have a pretty okay season. However, he did have a hamstring injury last season and he was kind of in and out of the team. So that is kind of something to actually look out for with this, because hamstring injuries and things like that can kind of crop up here and there, especially if you've had an injury like this before. It can come back quite unexpectedly. However, the fact was he was very consistent, even though he was kind of in and out a few times with an injury, which is quite impressive, because usually when players come back from injuries like that, especially something like their hamstring, it can affect their performance, but it didn't really seem to affect Olise's performance that much. So yeah, Olise going from Crystal Palace to Bayern Munich. And the next transfer that I'm going to go through is Douglas Luiz, who has gone from Aston Villa to Juventus for £42 million. And Luiz was a big part of Aston Villa's 2023-2024 season, and he was playing a very crucial central midfield role, so right in the middle of the park where kind of the game is dictated, and he did play a very, very big role in that. So in his 2023-2024 season, Luiz played 53 games, scoring 10 goals and 10 assists. So even though he is a bit more of a defensive player, and he mainly plays in central midfield but can also play defensive midfield, which he did play a few times last season, 10 goals and 10 assists for someone who is more defensive is pretty good, to be honest, and this is showing that also he can contribute going forward as well. So really he's a danger all over the park, and Luiz can really play in any midfield position really. So for Juventus, especially in a league like Serie A that seems to usually be a bit more defensive, having someone like Luiz could be a big signing for Juventus, especially considering all the controversies they've had in the last couple of seasons and they've kind of had to try and rebuild their team. So yeah, Douglas Luiz going from Aston Villa to Juventus. And the next one is Moussa Diaby. This is one that, to be honest, I was quite surprised about. So he's gone from Aston Villa to Al Ittihad for £50 million. And if you've taken any note of the transfer window, you'll notice that there hasn't been that much movement in the transfer window so far by the Saudi Arabian clubs, which I do find quite interesting. However, Diaby was only at Aston Villa for one season, and he ended up playing 54 games, scoring 10 goals and getting 9 assists. So he seemed to be quite inconsistent, and I think the big problem with Moussa Diaby was that he came from Bayer Leverkusen with a lot of hype around him. I think he was meant to be one of these next really good top players, and 10 goals and 9 assists in 54 games really kind of doesn't cut that. He really needs to be kind of getting double those numbers, so 20 goals, probably 15-20 assists a season, especially because of the hype that came around him when he came from Bayer Leverkusen. So I do think that a lot of this is kind of Aston Villa cutting ties with him because he hasn't lived up to that hype. And I know it's only been one season, but the worry that Aston Villa are probably going to have is if he kept up how well he was playing and getting these types of numbers every season, his price was only going to drop. So I think that they saw the £50 million bid and thought this is probably the best we're going to get for Diaby. So it did surprise me that a bit that he didn't really get a second or third season, especially because of the hype that came around him, and he obviously can play because he's shown it in the Bundesliga, but that price tag kind of doesn't surprise me because you would want to get rid of a player that has been that inconsistent, even if it's only in their third even if it's only in their first season. So Moussa Diaby going from Aston Villa to Al Ittihad. Moving on to the next transfer is Leny Yoro, and he has gone from Lille to Manchester United for £52 million. If I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't know much about the French defender. Last season he did play 44 games and get 3 goals. Obviously goals aren't the most important thing for a defender. However, he's only 18 years old and he ended up playing quite a few games for Lille, so he must have something to him, because you wouldn't put an 18-year-old really in 44 games in one season if he wasn't that good of a player, if I'm being honest. So like I said, I don't really know too much about him, but 52 million for an 18-year-old, there must be something to him. Hopefully he does get a chance in the Man United team at some point. I would think he would most likely be sent on loan, probably for this season and maybe next season. And then obviously if there's an injury to one of our defenders, he'll probably be put in a few games if he isn't already on loan. So yeah, it's one for the future obviously. It does kind of worry me, 52 million for an 18-year-old does seem a bit kind of out there, but then again, there might not be much to worry about. He might turn out to be the next great defender, which by that point this would probably look like a bargain, to be fair. So yeah, Leny Yoro going from Lille to Manchester United. And the last transfer I'm going to talk about is one that has been rumoured really for the past few years, and that is Killian Mbappe. Technically going from PSG, but he was basically a free agent because his contract had run out, going to Real Madrid for basically nothing, which either way you cut it, this is an absolute bargain for Real Madrid. And like I said, this has been rumoured for the past few years, but Mbappe did sign a 3-year contract a few years ago, so I don't think that any team was going to pay anything for him. It was always going to be a free transfer, because Killian Mbappe is one of those players that I don't think anyone could really afford to purchase. So this isn't really that much of a surprise that he's gone for nothing, and with all the rumours that he's basically going to Real Madrid, doesn't surprise me either. So last season he played 48 games, scoring 44 goals and 10 assists for PSG. In Liga, and he's kind of just got used to doing that every season, so there isn't really much of a surprise there. It's kind of what we've come to expect from Killian Mbappe, even though 44 goals in 48 games and 10 assists is an insane stat line. Some people will obviously look and say, look, it's in Liga and there's a lot of players today that could probably do that, but that's his stat line for last season. And obviously this has been rumoured for a few years, with Mbappe winning everything except the Champions League with PSG. And obviously if you're a player of Mbappe's talent, ability, you're going to want to go and at least be in contention for the Champions League. And then you've just also got to look at the fact that PSG have made deep runs into the Champions League, but they've never really looked like winning it. So this was really, I would say this was a matter of time before this deal actually happened. So it isn't really a surprise to anyone, and this is probably going to end up being the biggest transfer of the summer, along with him going for nothing and, you know, with his ability and all that, being one of the best players in the world. So those are just 5 kind of random transfers that I thought were either quite interesting, or with the Mbappe one, just a big transfer in general. Let me know what you think about these transfers down in the comments, and are there any other transfers that I didn't mention in this video that you think are quite an interesting buy? So yeah, thank you for listening. If you liked the video, leave a like, and if you liked the video, consider subscribing to the channel. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.